Hey everyone, Chelsea Butler with KBB here, and today I am talking about designing kitchens and baths with pets in mind. My guest today is Sarah Robertson, who is the owner of Studio Dearborn in Westchester County, New York. Welcome, Sarah, and thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me on today. I'm really excited.
So let's just give everybody a little background on, if you think this is a trend that's kind of exploding and how you got involved in it.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I hadn't really thought so much about the broader aspect of it becoming a trend, but I think you're absolutely right. I am getting more and more requests for pet stations and things to accommodate pets in the kitchen. And what I think is going on is I just think that it's kind of that next level of luxury that people are now realizing is attainable, and it's also really helpful in terms of helping people keep their kitchens neat and organized. And it's just kind of one more thing that they can tuck away and not have kind of sitting out. And pets can tend to be, a little bit on the messy side, and it allows people to kind of take that next step towards having a really organized, kind of tidy kitchen. And I think we've been seeing it on social media. We've been seeing it on magazines. We've been seeing show houses now that have a lot of, pet stations and kitchens and so on. And I think people are realizing, like, hey, that's something I want too.
Yeah, most definitely. I've seen it at a couple of trade shows too, for sure.
There's a lot of great ideas out there right now.
So can you talk to us a little bit about the first project you completed that included design elements for pets?
Yeah, the first project I completed, I never photographed it, but I accommodated a dog crate for a homeowner who had just gotten a puppy, and the crate was living in the kitchen essentially, and she decided that it was going to be a permanent fixture because her dog loved, spending time in his crate. And so we actually built a cabinet. It was kind of like a pantry sized cabinet around this dog crate. And it wasn't a large dog. And so we were able to kind of tuck the crate in and do doors that opened and recessed and just create kind of a big space to hold the crate. It could be closed off, and it could be repurposed for something else if they decided that that they wanted to move the crate out, or they got a different dog or whatever.
That sounds really cool. So how have things evolved since then with your current pet designs?
Most of what my clients are asking for these days are pet feeding and watering stations. I think that it tends to be kind of, first of all, it's kind of space efficient, but it's also kind of the messiest aspect, I think, of pet ownership, at least in terms of what's going on in the kitchen, is just the feeding and watering. And so I'm seeing a lot of that. And what we do is we will tend to kind of look around the kitchen and figure out what's the most logical place for us to incorporate a pet feeding station, where we can have a place for bowls, where it makes sense for the dogs to be standing and eating, and where we can also hopefully accommodate the food. And so we will usually create a container that's custom created to hold the pet food, with kind of a sliding lid to keep it fresh and all of that. So it takes a little bit of creativity, and that's kind of why every kitchen's different. It just depends on what we have room for. And really the kind of first priority is to get a spot for the bowls. And then the second priority is if we could squeeze in the food, then that's, a great bonus.
Do you also have to consider kind of where you're going to place where they're actually eating, depending on like the floor plan and people walking around and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly. So that for me, that's kind of the first consideration, is that I don't want the pets to be underfoot while they're eating. So the first thing you kind of want to look at is the flow of the kitchen, and to kind of get the pets sort of out of that main cooking flow. So we need to find a spot that's kind of on the perimeter. And then, but you don't want it too far away. You want it convenient enough that you can get to it and feed them, but at the same time to sort of have them out of that main flow. So kind of look for that. And then we've got other considerations. We need to make sure that it's not stealing space from something else that's really critical in that location. But yeah, you don't want to create like a bottleneck in the kitchen where people are kind of tripping over the dogs while they're eating.
Right.
And you would mention cats as well. And, it's interesting, cats are so much smaller and, have different kind of needs in terms of where they can or like to eat. And same with their water, like they like to have water separate from their food. So I find that it's a completely different thing, designing something for cats, and I'm not accommodating cats quite as much as dogs. But a lot of times if we do cats, we'll just put them in like a toe kick drawer, and we'll just
Okay.
put their food, just kind of tuck their food and do a toe kick drawer, which can be repurposed for other things. But then the cat has somewhere to go, and you can kind of put the cat food nearby.
Yeah, I saw a project once that was really interesting where, this is where you would accommodate, I don't know that you would need to accommodate dogs so much in the bathroom, but the designer had, had done a little cutout in the vanity on one side of it and closed it off from the rest of the vanity, I believe, and was able to put the cat litter box in there. So that it was completely hidden from them. And, the cat litter wasn't going all over the floor, and the cat actually had some privacy. I thought that was such a cool, customized idea. So you wouldn't have to put a cat litter box somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's really clever. And we did just do an accommodation for some cat litter boxes in a laundry room, actually. Which is kind of where we had the space for it, but it also happened to back up to a bathroom. So we created access through the bathroom for cleaning the cat's pans, because they're using a flushable litter. So the homeowner had the idea actually of putting a sliding door on the backside so that they could be cleaned from the bathroom, but the cats access it through the laundry room. And so there's plenty of room, and there's actually two litter boxes there, and we made the cutouts look like cats.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, just to add a little bit of fun.
Right.
So we did just do that, and it certainly, if you're keeping your cat box on the main floor of the house, it is really nice to kind of hide it away and have a little bit of fun with a little whimsy at the same time.
Yeah, I will never forget. One of my good friends said that she could always tell when somebody had a cat in the house. And I was like, no, you can't. You would never be able to tell. I pride myself on keeping everything clean, but I think that extra enclosure and, just sort of out of sight, out of mind kind of a thing helps with that. And I was going to say, with the whole popularity of having like a separate laundry room or a mud room or a multi-purpose room would be a, perfect place for that kind of a thing.
Yeah, honestly, laundry rooms work great for laundry rooms and mud rooms, for feeding the dogs and cats, and for litter pans, and because they're spaces that aren't necessarily you're not using such fragile materials, or a little more robust, and it feels a little better if you've got some kitty litter on the floor and that sort of thing, whereas you don't really want that in sort of the main parts of your house. So
Right.
It's definitely smart, I think, to look for spaces within those rooms to see if there's a little bit of customization that you can do to tuck those things in, so that the homeowner, when they move into this brand new house or the beautiful renovation, isn't suddenly like bringing in a litter pan and, like, where do I put this? My house looks so beautiful, but now I'm stuck with a plastic litter pan.
Right.
So yeah, I think that homeowners are really starting to focus on those sorts of potential customizations in ways that they never really had sort of known about the options before.
Yeah, and when we were talking about kind of keeping pets out of the way of the traffic and all that kind of stuff, like dogs, I feel like they don't care as much when it's time for them to eat. There could be 50 people in the room and they would still eat.
Yeah,
But with cats, yeah.
Totally agree with you. Cats like their privacy. Yeah, dogs, it's more of a function of trying to make sure they don't get tripped over.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if it was my cat, she would just leave the room, oh, there's too many people here. There's somebody walking by, they're making a loud noise. I can't eat here. So
yeah, And
I have to
I
think
feel like
about
my
that.
clients are pretty sensitive to their pets and kind of how comfortable they're going to be in eating in certain places. So I've definitely, talked through the clients because there's aspect of, where you want them to eat. And then there's the aspect of where they are going to be comfortable eating. So you kind of have to balance that out.
So we talked a lot about dogs and food stations and food storage, things like that. What about bathing stations? I think that would be something they might be asking for unless they're just, bathing them in their own bathroom. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there are options obviously for bathing a dog, like in a bathtub or whatever, but I think that the bathing stations seem to be catching on in terms of new builds, especially homes where they've got more room, bigger houses, potentially more pets. We just finished a project in Nashville and they built in a bathing station into the mudroom. So that, the pets can get washed in there. And it's really nice because then you can have kind of this elevated station where you're not having to kind of bend over and reach and chase the pet around to get them bathed. That's kind of what I go through with my dog, is kind of the chasing them around. Whereas if you have this, this raised washing station, and it's built to the right size for your pet, so you can kind of hang on to them, hold them still, and wash them and not be kind of reaching and bending over. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it's kind of the ultimate luxury if you have the room to dedicate to it.
Yeah, I was just thinking because my stepmom takes her and my dad's dog to a Petco or something like that to bathe him, just because it's a little hard to do it where they have. So like, yeah, having a space for that would be the ultimate luxury, I think. So you wouldn't even have to leave the house to do it,
Right, right. We have in our neck of the woods, we have, I think, a high enough density that there are actually trucks that will drive around that actually are mobile, pet washing places that will come by your house and wash your pet. And there's also like pet shampooing places in town. So it's probably not as much of a big deal around here, but it's also because there isn't as much room. We're right outside New York City. So I think when you're building a new house and you have the opportunity to build a larger space, then it can be really nice. And you probably don't have those mobile pet washing stations driving around your neighborhood anyway. So
that seems like a good luxury too, though. So very
convenient. I know.
So we've talked about cats and dogs. Just curious, have any other types of pets been discussed in your projects?
I have to say, no, I have really only dealt with cats and dogs. It's funny that you asked that. And I actually had to go online and check the statistics. I was curious, like how many millions of dogs and cats are there? And there are like something like it depends on the statistics you look at, but like 90 million dogs, and then another close to 90 million cats in the US. So, obviously the most popular pets, but I haven't, I have never, I think, even had a client who had any other pet. I don't know if you've seen any instances of people like accommodating like birds or, like ferrets, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about smaller animals and then I started laughing to myself. So I was thinking about horses and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, they're not going to have a horse in their kitchen. So
chickens, all kinds of possibilities.
You don't have to worry about that. Well, are there any specific questions that you've kind of come up with while you've been designing for pets that you ask your clients to kind of make sure you're going in the right direction?
Yeah, I think a few of the things that we really want to make sure we address, first of all, durability. We want to make sure that whatever we're building for the pet is going to be, it's going to be robust, that the finishes are going to stay nice and clean and fresh looking, that they're going to hold up over time. So we have to kind of consider that. And sometimes we may even have to bring in some different materials that we're not necessarily using in other places in the kitchen. But it's something to think about, like, for instance, when we're doing countertops in a kitchen where we're doing, say, a dog watering station, we sometimes want to plan ahead and make sure that there's another piece of stone. If we can, get like a fraction of a slab and dedicate it to the surface for the watering station, that's a good kind of thing to plan for, because we don't really want that surface to be wood or something that is going to, absorb water. So it's really great to plan ahead for those sorts of things, and to be thinking about durability. We also want to think about, we always want to talk about how much food is going to have to be stored, how much do they want right there, as opposed to how much are they keeping sort of in another location, in the basement, whatever. So how much space needs to be dedicated to storing food and treats, toys, medications, all of that. We need to talk through, are there specific medications or other specific accessories that they want to keep in the area? So, so durability is part of it, the allocation, making sure we allocate the right amount of storage. And then, we already talked about just making sure that the pets are comfortable with the area that we're designating, but also that you're going to be comfortable with having them there, whether we're creating a spot for them to sleep or a place for them to eat, that's going to be a good spot for them to be in your kitchen if you're also in there cooking or cleaning.
Yeah, that was the next question I was going to ask about, just sort of some challenges to consider. And obviously, if you're designing for pets, you do have to take, the material choices and, just durability and all that kind of stuff. So, you mentioned a bunch of those. What are some of the challenges around, oh, I want to design for my pet, but I want him or her to be far enough away from a cooking station or, where we're eating and all that kind of stuff? Like, how do you get around that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of goes kitchen by kitchen. And in some cases, it can take a bit of kind of thinking it through to figure out where's the right spot that isn't stealing space from something else. And that is, probably, more important to have in that location. So it tends to be a lot of, I always think of kitchen design as a little bit of a Rubik's Cube type of a problem. We're shifting things around, and every time one thing shifts, something else has to shift. So it becomes a question of like, what do we shift out of the way so that there's room, and how kind of self-contained and small can we make it so it's not stealing space from other things. So it becomes that balance. I tend to sort of start on the perimeter of the kitchen and kind of look around for spaces that are more outside the main cooking area, on the sides of cabinets, or possibly even, pushed into a wall somewhere, just kind of found space. And there's quite often, little niches that are underutilized. And that's kind of what I'm always looking for, is that space that, okay, maybe we had an idea for what went there, but maybe it wasn't super critical, or maybe it was underutilized, and we can steal that spot for the dog. And so, yeah, that's kind of how my process works. And sometimes we just don't find a spot. But what I do try to always do with the designs, or make them so that they can be repurposed and flexible. So that if we are allocating, in the case of that crate that we put into the kitchen in the very first time we did a dog accommodation, I wanted to make sure that it could be repurposed for something else, because it was a lot of space. So that's, I address kind of every dog station with that same thought process of, if you had to repurpose this, what do we need to think about? Do we need to make the opening a little bit different so you can add doors, or should we use a slightly different material, or so the space can be repurposed by the next homeowner, or if you end up not having a dog 10 years from now.
Yeah, I have heard another person mention that kind of thing too, with sort of a hush hush, can't talk about that kind of stuff, but
yeah, right, I know, because it's hard.
Yeah. But then you talked about all your custom pet stations, that none of them, you've never designed the same one twice. What are some of the differences?
Well, some of the things that I talked about before, first of all, kind of location, and then location kind of dictates the size. Of course, the pets vary in size as well, by a lot. And some people have, I'll be designing one station for, a single dog that's under 20 pounds. And then the next time I'll be designing for two dogs that are both over 80 pounds. And so you have to think through the amount of space that they need, the height of the bowls, the space that they need to stand there while people are moving around them. And all of those things call for just kind of a completely different solution, oftentimes in a different location in the kitchen. So I've learned through experience the size of the bowls that the dogs need and how much spacing they need and how high should be off the floor given how tall the dog is, and all of those things just kind of by doing it over and over again. But yeah, every solution is different, and you sort of hope that if you're designing for a dog that's 80 pounds, that the homeowner doesn't get rid of that dog and then go to one that's like 15 pounds, because
Right.
because the dog bowl might not be at the right height.
Right. They've got to choose their next dog based on, the size of what's already in there. That's
Based
funny.
on the dog station. Yeah.
So what do you think some future requests will be when designing with pets in mind for the kitchen and or bathroom?
Yeah, I thought it's an interesting question. I don't see a lot of requests for spaces for them to sleep. And I kind of expect that won't come up as much. I've seen them in show houses and so on. And I know a lot of dogs do sleep in the kitchen. But it's interesting how they'll kind of flop down on the floor and be just happy kind of right in the middle of things. So I'm expecting that I'll just continue to see requests for feeding stations. I have a feeling feeding and watering are going to be kind of the biggest things that people are going to continue to look for, especially, the water stations. Now that we've done a few of those, are actually not that hard to pull off. And we've found that the pot fillers work really well for dogs. So I would expect that we'll continue to see more of those, just because they do make, watering your pets so much easier. And I also think that we'll continue to see creative solutions for storing dog food, so that is just easier to access and it's less messy. And so as kind of, I find that refinements happen, with every job that I do in terms of storage solutions for pet food. So I think we'll continue to see a little more, a little more luxury, a little more customization on that end too.
I was thinking about, designing a sleeping station for a cat or something like that is just going to come back and bite you, I feel like, because my cat has all sorts of little places she likes to go, but right now she's just laying on the floor in front of this window I was telling you about with the sun coming in. She's not laying in her cat bed. So if I customize my kitchen to have a space for her to sleep, she wouldn't. So
yeah, exactly. And I think dogs, I'm finding, we haven't had a dog in a long time, but now we've had one for about 8 months. And I am finding that he sleeps somewhere different every day. He's like the cat in the sense that, he'll sort of like a spot for a couple days and then he moves on. So
right.
I would hate to build in a sleeping spot for a cat or a dog and then find that they just don't use it. It's kind of a pretty big accommodation for them to have them not be using it. So, but at the same time, let's say, you have a cat who is a good jumper and likes to sleep up high, and there's no reason why you couldn't sort of design a shelf, put a kitty bed in there, make sure it's not so high that he or she can't access it, and just kind of leave it empty and see if they use it. And if they don't, then you put your cookbooks there,
Right.
So I think it's that sort of planning ahead and just saying, hey, we'll give it a shot and make sure it's a flexible space. And if they like it, great.
So it seems like this would definitely be kind of a challenging thing for builders to try to include in a house plan. Just because of the varying needs, sizes, that kind of thing. They could put something in there that could be the completely wrong thing for the people who are moving in. So I don't know if that's going to catch on there so much.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm sure some builders are trying it. And in certain parts of the country, I guess, they could give it a shot based upon the types of dogs that are popular, and assuming that they have plenty of space already to give up to a dog station that might not get used. But really, again, it really depends on how large the houses are, and the propensity for people to have dogs. But I think certain parts of the country, dogs are very, very popular. So it probably wouldn't be a bad thing if they could come up with a formula that would work most of the time.
Hey,
Probably the way I would look at it.
Maybe we just came up with the next great idea.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, to have a little spot where you could feed the dog is not that hard. And you can even stick a water bowl in there, even if it doesn't have a pot filler. And that cabinet could get repurposed for something. You can offer the homeowner to put doors on it if they don't have a dog, and there you go.
Yeah, that makes sense. So my last question, obviously, is going to be, you said you've had a dog for the last 8 months. Does your own kitchen or bath have design elements included for your dog, or will maybe in the future?
It had a toe kick drawer to feed the cat. The cat's been with us for 10 years, and we built that toe kick drawer so that she could be fed there, and that worked out absolutely great until we got the dog. And when we got the dog, I didn't want her to be sort of subjected to the invasion of privacy of having the dog right there when she was eating. So we moved her up to the countertop, and the dog is sort of eating on the floor, and it turns out he's a grazer. So we haven't been able to use the drawer for the dog. The cat, on the other hand, eats in 10 seconds, and
right.
Pull the drawer open, you feed her, and 10 seconds later you could shut it and it's gone. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to figure out how to kind of retrofit something in for the dog. But he's a smallish dog, and I found a really nice kind of mid-century modern, watering station for him. And so far we're getting by. And then we do have a spot for his dog food and for her food. So that's the important thing. At least that's not sitting out.
Your cat seems very well behaved. I feel like my cat would figure out how to open the drawer if I left food there. She'd figure out how to get to it.
Really? Yes. I guess she's easy that way then. Yeah. And the dog doesn't try to get into, the food in the cabinet. He doesn't try to get into the garbage. There are a lot of things I need to be thankful for on that.
Most definitely. Well, thank you so much for having this discussion with me today, Sarah. This was awesome. I really hope this does take hold in the industry. I think it's awesome that people are caring for their pets enough to include them in these designs. I think it's important, and I'm so glad that you were able to enlighten us today.
Yeah, no, this was really, really fun to share some ideas and some successes that we've had with these pet stations. And yeah, I hope people can find ways to retrofit them into their remodels, or find a way to put them into their new builds, because it is just a nice way to keep your kitchen kind of feeling a little bit more neat and pulled together and zen, and gives your pets a special place to hang out. So